Well, as an immigrant, I found one thing about America that is fascinating. Americans are so serious about their religious belief. Or non-belief. And a big portion of American public debate and discussions are centered around religious issues. I'm especially fascinated by the fact that there are so many YouTube channels focused on just Christian apologists and atheism. And they seem to have a very good symbiotic relationship because a huge portion of their content is based on reacting to or quote-unquote debunking the other side's videos, which I found particularly enjoyable. I recently began binge-watching these contents and noticed that both sides seem to frequently employ logical fallacy in their arguments. So today I compiled 8 logical fallacy frequently used by both atheists and Christian apologists. So let's talk about it with BAA. Hi, I'm Xiaojie Lo. Welcome to What People Also Ask, where I compile some fun fact to share with you, usually by conducting a lot of Googling. Today I want to talk about 8 logical fallacy frequently used by both atheists and Christian apologists. If you are an atheist or Christian apologist, I want to let you know I am not trying to attack you. I simply just want to compile some logical fallacy that is frequently used by both sides. The example I use in this video are just some examples I heard from some atheists and Christian apologists. It does not represent all apologists or atheists, so I'm not strawmanning you. Oh wait, what is strawmanning? Let's talk about our first fallacy. What is Strawman Fallacy? The Strawman Fallacy occurs when someone misrepresents an opponent's argument to make it easier to attack or refute, rather than addressing the actual argument. This involves exaggerating, oversimplifying, or completely fabricating aspects of the argument. It's a common technique in debate and discussion used to undermine the opponent's position by attacking the weaker strawman representation, rather than engaging with the real issues or points being made. Everyday example. Imagine a conversation about environmental policy. Person A says, I think we need stricter regulation to protect the environment. Person B responds, so you want to shut down all the factory and put everyone out of work? Here, person B is misrepresenting person A's argument. Person A suggested stricter regulation, not the extreme measure of shutting down all factories, which is a strawman that person B created to attack the argument more easily. Example of atheists use strawman fallacy. In a debate on the existence of God, an atheist claimed that Christians believe in God merely because they cannot handle the reality of death and seek solace in the concept of an afterlife. Represent a strawman fallacy. This fallacy arises from the oversimplification and misrepresentation of the complex reason behind Christian belief in God. The atheist argument does not acknowledge the array of philosophical, theological, and personal motivations that Christians often cite as the foundation of their faith. Instead, it reduces their belief to a simplistic and not universally applicable explanation centered around fear of death and the need for afterlife assurance. This approach effectively creates a distorted version of Christian belief, which is easier to discredit, but fails to engage with the actual nuanced reasons that many Christians offer for their faith. Example of Christian apologists use strawman fallacy. When Christian apologists say atheists believe solely in science to explain everything in the universe and reject a notion of non-physical entities, they are committing a strawman fallacy. This oversimplified depiction does not accurately reflect the diverse perspectives of atheists. Many atheists do not assert that science has answered to all questions, nor do they all discount the possibility of phenomena beyond the reach of current scientific understanding. The lack of belief in God is often grounded in the lack of compelling evidence, rather than an absolute reliance on scientific explanation for all aspects of existence. By portraying atheists as strict materialists who denied anything beyond the physical, the apologists overlook the complex and varied views many atheists hold regarding the limit of scientific knowledge and the unknown. The generalization fails to address the real and multifaceted view of atheism. What is ad hominem? The ad hominem fallacy occurs when someone attacks their opponent's character or personal trait instead of engaging with the actual argument being presented. This tactic is used to undermine the opponent's position by discrediting them personally, rather than addressing the substance of their argument. The aim is to divert attention from the argument to the individual, making their argument seem less credible or convincing. Everyday example. In a discussion about health policy, Person A argues, we should have universal health care because it leads to better overall health outcomes. Person B responds, you just support universal health care because you are a socialist who hate free enterprise. Here, person B is committing an ad hominem fallacy by attacking person A's political ideology rather than presenting the actual argument against universal health care to support his refutation. Example of atheist use ad hominem fallacy. In a religious debate, when an atheist says, you only believe in God because you are not educated enough to understand science, it constitutes an ad hominem attack. This approach unfairly targets the believer's intelligence and level of education, rather than engaging constructively with the philosophical or theological base of their belief in God. Such a statement implies that the believer's faith is a result of a lack of understanding, overlooking the myriad of reason, including personal experience and existential reflection, that might underpin their belief. By focusing on the believer's perceived personal shortcoming, the atheist diverts the discussion away from the substantive argument about faith and religion. This tactic not only dismisses the believer's perspective, but also evades a genuine exploration of the complex reason behind religious beliefs. Example of Christian apologists use ad hominem fallacies. In the discourse on faith, Christian apologists claim, atheists are just bitter people who reject God because they want to live sinful life without guilt. Serve as an ad hominem attack. This statement criticizes atheists' moral character and personal motivation rather than constructively addressing the philosophical or rational argument behind the disbelief in God. By attributing their lack of a belief to a desire for an unaccountable lifestyle, the apologists shift the focus from the substantive debate on the existence of God to a judgment of atheist character. This approach not only disrespects the genuine intellectual position held by many atheists, but also sidesteps the opportunity for an honest discussion about the complexity and nuance of belief and non-belief. What is false dilemma/false dichotomy? The false dilemma, also known as false dichotomy fallacy, occurs when an argument presents two options as the only possibility when in fact more options exist. This fallacy limits the possibility to two, often extreme options, with the intent to force a choice between them, ignoring other viable alternatives. It's a tactic used in argumentation to corner the opponent into choosing an undesirable option or oversimplify complex issues into black and white choices. Everyday example. In a discussion about career choice, person A says, you either go to college and succeed, or you don't go and end up failing in life. Here, person A is presenting a false dilemma by suggesting that success is only achievable through college education, and that not attending college inevitably leads to failure. Let's ignore other paths to success, like vocational training, entrepreneurship, or self-taught skills. Example of atheists use false dilemma fallacy. An atheist might employ a false dilemma fallacy by asserting, you must either accept evolution or reject all religious teaching, or deny science entirely and live in ignorance. This statement presents an overly simplistic choice, implying that accepting scientific theories like evolution is fundamentally incompatible with any religious belief. It ignores that many individuals who reconcile their religious belief with scientific understanding, and the various religious interpretation that does not conflict with scientific discoveries. By framing the debate as either-or scenario, it dismisses the nuanced position many hold that blend scientific understanding with spiritual beliefs. Example of Christian apologists use false dilemma fallacy. A Christian apologist might use a false dilemma fallacy by stating, you either believe in the Christian God and have a moral compass, or you are an atheist and live a life without any moral guidance. This creates an oversimplified binary choice, suggesting that the morality is exclusive to Christian belief and non-existent in atheism. It disregards the possibility of atheists and followers of other religions possessing strong ethical principles independent of Christian doctrine. This argument unfairly diminishes the complex landscape of moral philosophy and the diverse source of ethical value across different culture and belief systems. 4. What is circular reasoning, aka begging the question? Circular reasoning, also known as begging the question, occurs when the conclusion of an argument is assumed in the premise. Essentially, the argument goes in circles, with the conclusion simply restating a form of the original assumption. It's a logical fallacy because it does not provide any actual evidence or reasoning, just reasserting the point in the way that appears to be an argument. Everyday example. Imagine someone arguing about the trustworthiness of a news source. Said, You can trust this news channel because it always tells the truth. This is a circular reasoning because of the premise. The channel tells the truth. It's the same as the conclusion. It is trustworthy. It assumes what it's trying to prove without providing any external evidence of the channel's credibility. Example of atheists use circular reasoning. In a theological debate, an atheist may propose a circular argument by asserting God is merely a man-made concept because all notions of God are inherently created by human. This line of reasoning is inherently circular, as it employs the premise of God's concept being human-generated as a proof of its artificiality. The argument essentially concludes that God is a man-made construct on the basis that the concept of God originated from human thought. However, this reasoning is circular because it assumes what it seeks to prove. The premise that all ideas of God are human creation is used to substantiate the conclusion that God therefore is a fabricated concept. This approach neglects to consider the possibility of a divine entity existing independently of human conceptualization, presupposing instead that the very act of human concept of God invalidates the existence of a divine being. Such argument failed to provide external verification for its claim and instead relied on its own logic to prove its point, making it a clear instance of circular reasoning. Example of Christian apologists use circular reasoning. A Christian apologist may utilize circular reasoning by claiming the Bible is inherently truth because it is the Word of God, and its divine origin is confirmed because the Bible itself asserts it. This form of argumentation is circular as it relies on the Bible's self-proclamation as the Word of God to validate its truthfulness. The conclusion that the Bible is true is embedded within the premise that it is the Word of God, a premise which, in turn, is substantiated solely by the Bible's own declaration. This reasoning does not offer external verification or independent reasoning to support the truth of the Bible. It assumes the veracity of the Bible to prove its divine origin, and then use its purported divine origin to assert its veracity. Such a methodology fails to step outside the internal logic of the Bible to provide an independent basis for its truth, making it a clear instance of circular reasoning. By not engaging with external historical archaeology and textual analysis, the argument closes in on itself, using its own claim as the sole evidence for its conclusion. 5. What is slippery slope? The slippery slope is a logical fallacy that occurs when it is assumed that a relatively small first step leads to a chain of related events culminating in some significant, usually negative effect. This fallacy suggests that taking a specific action will inevitably lead to other action resulting in an undesirable outcome without providing sufficient evidence for such inevitability. Everyday example. Consider an argument against relaxing work dress code said, if we allowed employees to wear casual clothes on Friday, soon they will start dressing casually every day. And before we know it, the office will become unprofessional and productivity will plummet. This is a slippery slope fallacy because it assumes a series of increasingly negative and uncontrolled outcomes from a simple change in dress codes without evidence to support such a drastic decline. Example of atheists use slippery slope. In a debate on religious freedom, an atheist might argue, if we allowed religious symbol in public school, it will soon lead to school forcing religious teaching on all students, ultimately ending in government-enforced religious practice. This argument is a slippery slope because it presumes that a minor acceptance of religious expression will inevitably escalate to extreme outcomes like mandatory religious indoctrination, without substantiating how or why this extreme step will necessarily follow. Example of Christian apologists use slippery slope. A Christian apologist might claim if society begins to accept atheistic belief, it will lead to the decline of moral values, followed by increased crime and societal breakdown. This presents a slippery slope fallacy by suggesting that acceptance of atheism will unavoidably result in dire moral and societal consequences. This argument leaps from a change in belief system to extreme social decay, without providing evidence or logical reasoning to support such catastrophic chain of events. 6. What is appeal to authority? The appeal to authority is a logical fallacy that occurred when an argument relied on the opinion, position, or authority of an individual or institution as a primary basis for a conclusion without sufficient supporting evidence. This fallacy arises when a conclusion is based mainly on the authority's endorsement, not on solid evidence or analysis. It's problematic because authorities can be mistaken, and history shows experts have held now disproven beliefs. Focusing on who makes the argument rather than its intrinsic merit can lead to neglecting actual evidence. Authorities can also be misquoted or influenced by biases, leading to misinformation. Furthermore, reliance on authority discourages independent thinking and critical analysis, promoting acceptance of ideas without proper scrutiny. Everyday example: consider someone arguing about a health trend said, "This diet must be effective because a famous scientist followed it." This is an appeal to authority fallacy because it claims that the diet's effectiveness on a scientist's endorsement, not on scientific evidence or nutritional studies. Additionally, the scientist's personal choice to follow a diet does not necessarily reflect scientific consensus or rigorous research. Example of atheist use appeal to authority. An atheist might argue, renowned scientist Professor X states that there's no evidence for the existence of God. Therefore, God does not exist. This argument is an appeal to authority, as it relies heavily on the scientist's reputation and authority in the field, rather than present concrete evidence or logical argument to support the non-existence of God. It assumes that the scientist's authority alone is sufficient to validate the claim, without engaging in a deeper analysis of the evidence or argument involved. Example of Christian apologists use appeal to authority. A Christian apologist may claim the existence of God is true because it has been endorsed by several Nobel Prize-winning scientists. This represents an appeal to authority fallacy because as it uses the accolade and recognition of scientists to validate religious beliefs. This argument assumes that the authority of the Nobel laureate leads credibility to the belief of God, without providing direct evidence or logical reasoning related to the existence of a divine being. It failed to recognize that expertise in one field, like science, does not automatically confer authority on theological matter. 7. What is no-truth Gottman fallacy? The no-truth Gottman fallacy is a form of logical fallacy that involves modifying a generalization in an ad hoc fashion to exclude a counterexample and thus protect the generalization from refutation. It's typically used to salvage an unfounded claim by changing the term to exclude specific cases. This fallacy is problematic because it dismisses relevant counterexample arbitrarily and avoids genuine discussion or analysis of the claim. Everyday example. Imagine a person who argues, all students at my school are outstanding scholars. When presented with an example of a student with poor academic performance, they counter, well, no true student of my school would be performing poorly. This is a no-truth Gottman fallacy, as it arbitrarily redefines the true students to exclude the counterexample, without addressing the original claim's accuracy. Atheist example of no-truth Gottman fallacy. An atheist might assert all religious people are irrational, a sweeping generalization. However, when presented with a counter-argument, like a religious individual renowned for rational thinking, the atheist might retort, no truly religious person can be rational. This response is a classic example of the no-truth Gottman fallacy, because he revises a universal claim, all religious people are irrational, in the face of a valid counterexample, a rational religious person, rather than acknowledging the exceptions or re-evaluating the original claim. By redefining the criteria for what constitutes a religious person to exclude anyone rational, the atheists conveniently sidestep a direct challenge to their belief. This tactic allows them to maintain their original assertion without engaging with contradictory evidence, thus avoiding a substantive discussion or re-examination of their stance. Christian example of no-truth Gottman fallacy. A Christian might assert, no true Christian would ever leave their faith. This statement implies that maintaining one's faith is an essential unchanging characteristic of a true Christian. However, when faced with example of a devout individual who would have renounced their Christian faith, the claimant might respond, "Well, anyone who leaves their faith was never a true Christian to begin with." This reaction demonstrates the no true Scotsman fallacy. It involved redefining the criteria of what constitutes a true Christian in response to a counterexample that challenged the original claim. Instead of acknowledging the faith can be complex and subject to change, even among sincere believers, the assertion is adjusted to dismiss this instance as not fitting the true Christian definition. This approach sidesteps the need to address the original statement validity and avoid engaging with the reality of diverse faith experience. 8. What is appeal to ignorance? The appeal to ignorance is a logical fallacy that occurred when a conclusion is drawn based on the absence of evidence rather than the presence of evidence. The fallacy suggests that a claim is true because it has not been proven false, or that a claim is false because it has not been proven true. It's problematic because the lack of evidence is not a valid indicator of truth. In many cases, evidence may be undiscovered or unobtainable, making such argument baseless. Everyday example. Imagine someone argues that a certain celebrity must be a good person because no scandal or negative story has been reported about them. This is an appeal to ignorance, as it assumes that the individual's virtue based on the negative evidence. It failed to consider that lack of public scandal does not inherently equate to proof of good character. Such an argument overlooks other possibilities like effective public relations management or simply lack of public scrutiny. Atheist example of appeal to ignorance. An atheist might assert, given the absence of conclusive evidence or empirical data supporting the existence of God, it's rational to conclude that God does not exist. This statement exemplifies the appeal to ignorance fallacy. It incorrectly assumes that the lack of evidence confirming God's existence inherently validate his non-existence. This perspective failed to acknowledge the epistemological limitation inherent in human understanding and the nature of scientific inquiry, which may not be equipped to explore or validate metaphysical or transcendental concept. The argument oversimplified a complex philosophical and theological issues by applying empirical standard to a domain where such standard may not be applicable or sufficient. It also disregards alternative methods of understanding, such as experiential, anecdotal, or faith-based approach, which, while not empirical, holds significance in the discourse about the divine. This reasoning therefore conflates the absence of empirical evidence with the evidence of absence, overlooking the nuanced nature of belief and the existential question that may lie beyond the realm of empirical verification. Christian example of appeal to ignorance. A Christian might argue, since science has yet disproved the existence of God, we can confidently believe that God exists. This statement is a classic example of the appeal to ignorance fallacy. It incorrectly assumes that the absence of scientific evidence against God's existence is equivalent to positive proof of his existence. This line of reasoning overlooks the fundamental nature of scientific inquiry, which is primarily designed to test and understand the natural world, not dive into the metaphysical or theological claim. It also ignores the principle that science, by its nature, often refrains from making definitive statements about phenomena that lie outside empirical observation and measurement. It conflates the limitation of scientific methodology with affirmative evidence, neglecting the nuanced relationship between faith, belief, and empirical knowledge. If you made it to the end of the video, chances are that you enjoy learning what people also ask on Google. But let's face it, reading PAA yourself will be a pain. So here's the deal. I will do the reading for you and upload a video compiling some fun PAA once a week. All you have to do is to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so you won't miss any PAA report that I compile. So just do it right now. Bye!